Yeah, if you can just give me maybe just a quick kind of bio of what you do for anyone who's listening who's not super familiar with what you're doing over on Twitter and what you're doing in the Psychedelics Anonymous community.
For sure. So got into NFTs a little bit over a year ago. I think it was probably like 15, 16 months ago. Initially, got attracted by obviously seeing what some of these JPEGs were selling for. And then also after that aspect, kind of unfolded for me, I started to do some research and watched a lot of Gary Vee videos. And I'd probably, attribute him as one of the people that really got me kind of more interested in him, because I was really learning about kind of the smart contract application to different industries. And that's where I kind of saw, the bread and butter of, why Web3 will make it. There's just so many systems in place where, things could be, drastically improved upon. That being said, that's going to take time. It's going to take adoption and all that. And through my trading the first month or so, got rugged a few times, like pretty much everyone in NFTs. And then eventually landed upon Psychedelics Anonymous, and heard Volterra on his spaces. He was probably the most eloquent person I had heard just from the NFT space, given what some of these discords were like at the time back in the bull market, where it was just absolute nonsense and people typing just a bunch of gibberish in to get points to level up to maybe get whitelist. And so I just noticed something different about the project and the way he carried himself and his vision, because at the end of the day, obviously I want to take part in the NFT ecosystem, take some profits along the way like everyone else. But for me, it was the community. It's the tech that really excites me, and it's why I've remained here. Obviously, what brought me in was probably more of the money, but then for PA specifically, it was a project that at first glance, I didn't fully understand, and that somewhat fascinated me. I've always really loved puzzles. In terms of the lore for PA, some people view it as dark, others kind of view it as mysterious. And for me, it fascinated me that I couldn't fully grasp or understand it. So it reeled me in a little bit more. And then over time, as the community developed and the project developed, and got to know Volterra a little bit more, I was putting out content for the community. Basically asked, once I did one thread one time, recapping one of Fold's spaces, because he used to do hour and a half to 2 hour spaces. I would recap them all in a thread, and people loved it. And so the community kept pushing me to do more and more of it. They kept supporting me. And it got to a point where, now I probably, whether it's directly or indirectly, probably onboarded a few hundred people. And so it got to a point where a little bit after NFT New York, I was talking to Volterra, and the community was really telling me to keep going and pushing, and they were actually driving somewhat of a narrative that the team should hire me. Obviously, was definitely very open to the idea, just because I enjoyed it and loved it. So yeah, I joined as the content lead, as part of the council. So I'm basically, tasked with writing or creating or brainstorming different content pieces that the team can leverage, or that can just help kind of grow the PA brand or its recognition, or just more eyes on us in general. And I would say over the last few months as well, I think it was, if I remember correctly, maybe April of last year, I got to a point where I recognized, just very transparently, you know, communities can only grow so big. And, I've connected with a lot of the PA community, but I also recognized, if I want to grow my platform or my audience, which is funny enough, never really my intention when I jumped into the space. I didn't want to be someone with, a figurehead or a talking, a talking pundit or anything to that matter. It just kind of naturally developed, and people really appreciated me in this industry, and so I'd like to give back and kind of help contribute to their growth as well. And so, more recently, I've been doing an educational series around spaces, and then that's pretty much kind of developed over close to a year now. So I've hosted, I think, probably around 20-ish people. some really exciting conversations, some with founders, some with content creators, some with traders. So just trying to do my part there, because I definitely recognize there was a massive gap upon first entering the industry in terms of education. There's shit posting and memes all the time and plenty of GMs, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's part of culture. I love it to a certain extent, especially the memes. But at the same time, we need to see real developments to see true change. So that's a little bit about me, and I just want to help contribute to the educational aspect of it.
No, that's awesome. And like my kind of pathway into PA was being an early Rebels by Night holder, and there's a lot of a crossover between those communities, and a lot of the folks are holding both projects. And I know that Volterra and Nas are close and speak frequently as well. And I had him on as a guest, and he had a lot of great things to say about what Volterra has been doing. And I think that part of what made me want to make this podcast is sometimes there is so many things going on, especially on spaces. There's like multiple spaces a day, and it's really hard to keep up with, especially. I'm in my 30s and I got a kid and a wife and a full time job, and there's a lot going on, right? So I think lots of people have different stuff going on, and so it's nice to have. I read a lot of your threads over the months and over the last year, and breaking down some of that stuff, which was great because I can't always attend everything. And, that's super valuable to a community to have someone like you. And like when I first joined PA, I've kind of joined a while back last year and then rejoined. It was great to everyone sends me to you, sends everyone to you. I think to if you want to know about PA, you go to Kloss, and he's going to have the info for you. And even what you've been doing, kind of bringing awareness to New Dawn, that's really what got me even more excited about PA recently, was seeing what was possible with New Dawn, and just that is something so new to the space. And maybe if you can talk a little bit about your feelings on New Dawn, your experiences, and how that's been so far for the project.
For sure. So, I mean, and just to touch on it, I mean, you hit on a good point, but what's really attracted me, like I said initially, obviously the profit, but then the smart contract applications, and then basically just the tech, what people are building here is super exciting. So from that angle, like love Nos as well and what he's doing at Rebels. He was actually a team I, I privately was speaking to back in the day, and someone I have a lot of respect for and love. So great community as well. But really, my thesis around just adoption for NFTs or Web3 in general. Right now, we're in a bit of, and excuse my French, a little bit of a shitstorm where, everyone, for lack of better terms, is chasing profit. And nothing wrong with that. That's why a lot of people came into this space. But now in a bear, it's really amplified with, the introduction of Blur, with some people hurting, some projects communicating less because they're working on, long-term deliverables. You're seeing absolute panic in the market, but you're also seeing a trend of pretty much the last few months. I would even argue maybe even last 6 months. Liquid moves from project to project. What's hot, for a couple weeks, will die down and it'll move to something else. And people, take their profits in and out. They'll also dump certain projects to, try and jump in on the FOMO. And again, nothing wrong with that. Profit is profit. I'm not going to tell people what to do with their money. That's the absolute wrong thing to do. But in reality, we're in a downward trend right now because everyone's, chasing profit. Everyone's going from project to project. And no one's really appreciating the long-term teams or the products unless they're like a massive name and they're very well known and they consistently drive hype. So for me, my thesis has been, a year, two out from now, that I generally believe even the projects that are struggling right now, maybe bleeding a little bit, or not getting the attention they deserve, they will, kind of stand through the test of time and actually, kind of make it through here. People say 99% of NFT projects are not going to make it. That's, likely true to an extent because there's not enough support and love for the projects that are actually, making and building really cool stuff. It's just a matter of everyone wanting to flip what's hot and make some money. So for New Dawn in particularly, PA had that realization. It was actually birthed by the idea that Volterra changed his sweatshirt on his ape, and he's had his Bored Ape for a while. It has it's like a blue, red, and white, or sorry, red, white, and blue, kind of like a tracksuit jumpsuit. And he always wanted a black hoodie, so he put a black hoodie on it. So technically, his PFP with his ape, what was never really the real NFT when he had the black hoodie on it, but a lot of people didn't recognize or know that. But his whole idea was, identity is something that changes over time, and you could apply that to all things in life. So whether it's people spending money on cars, on houses, on clothes, on makeup, on material possessions, whether it's changing your hair or getting all dolled up for a nice date. Identity matters to a lot of people, and we've seen it kind of warp and kind of change and alter over time. And I think people aren't quite fully ready or recognizing the full potential of digital identity because it is somewhat of a newer concept. But we've seen, in Fortnite in particular, and quite a few other games do it now with microtransactions, people will continuously spend small amounts of money to add aesthetics or looks to a digital character, a digital avatar that provides no actual improved gameplay. It just generally makes you look cooler, or it makes you feel like you're more yourself, or makes you feel like you're someone else, and that's something they want to explore, which is absolutely all right. But it's people haven't really recognized or even given it credit yet just how big of a industry it's become, because Fortnite's made billions off of just skins and things that can never be resold. And the whole idea of New Dawn is, let's bring a trade economy to NFTs. Let's onboard new collections so they can have a sustainable revenue stream. People can pay fees to make little slight alterations to their PFP on chain. And then also from a collection standpoint and a team standpoint, you can keep your collection culturally relevant. So let's say there's hot things coming in and out of the market. Maybe there's exciting partnerships. You could feature that within your PFP, within those traits, within that NFT. So over time, as things develop, let's say there's a big event or a national holiday or Christmas or something like that, you can actually play into those themes and add elements to your community that they can kind of join around and potentially enjoy. Then on the second element, you really have, from my perspective, the second thing is you'll see really as collections add culturally relevant aspects and traits, like I said, communities will join in around that. Then from another aspect, you have partnerships. So how do you bring more Web2 brands into Web3? Well, you could do partnerships and collabs with certain ones around traits for collections. That brings in a whole new audience. It also brings attention to that said project, and potentially, new newcomers, more people getting onboarded, just more recognition and attention. And then really the third piece is it adds a whole nother layer to kind of the way you think about NFTs, because as we've seen with Blur recently, it really, floors are getting hit hard across the board, and really only rares are retaining much value. And so in essence, you can start to build your own grail or your own identity, which people have never really been able to do to a certain extent before. So, whether it's you own 10 NFTs and you want to play around with those traits distinctively between those 10, you can do that. Or let's say you have one and you just want to change it over time. Maybe you're feeling a blue sweatshirt today, maybe you're feeling a suit next month. You could try that out. And then from a collector standpoint, it allows for really a hyper, in my perspective, I don't even know if hyper is the right word. I would say a whole nother, like I said, enabled layer to NFT trading. So now you have people flipping grails or rares, but then you also have people building grails or rares. And then the third piece would be you really can dig into that and now also flip traits. So back in the day, someone might have bought something for really expensive just because of one trait, whereas the other aspects of the NFT they may not have liked. Now you can really hone in on that and allow people to individually trade NFTs as well as traits, kind of allowing for both audiences to really have fun there, while also improving the collection, making it culturally relevant, and then additionally, helping collectors or flippers improve their pieces, as well as individuals that maybe had a floor, they can make it a little bit aesthetically better over time. But that's really kind of the vision with New Dawn, and PA has, I believe, 8 that I know of. collections signed on. One of those is including Root Troop, so that they're the first one coming on, and they're doing a Polygon integration, I believe, either this week or next week, just to support that because Root Troop's moving over. But ideally, we'd love for this product to be serviced across NFTs. I mean, it's not relevant for every single NFT project, that's for sure. One, it's not going to apply to everyone, but then also there's historic NFTs, there's premium arts, there's NFTs like Bored Ape and CryptoPunk, where hypothetically, even though Volts had his idea birthed for New Dawn out of that, I see those as a little bit more of stretches to take on, trait dynamics, just because of kind of the premium people have already paid for them. So that is kind of the whole concept in a nutshell, but happy to dig into it a little bit more.
Oh, that's cool. And I think we'll start to see projects probably building with New Dawn in mind now, right? And the biggest thing that it came up in a lot of the conversations I've had is especially around NFTs, is that it's really hard for people to want to hold an NFT if they're not using it. And I see New Dawn as a way to actually make you use your NFT, right? You're assembling, disassembling it, you're constructing it, reconstructing it, you're trading, and because you're getting that use out of it, that's in my opinion going to actually help retain folks wanting to hold and wanting to be part of the project and buy in and buy, new Genesis that they maybe want to deconstruct. And that's what I did, right? I bought two and kind of built what I wanted out of it. So I think that's extremely important, right? In the NFT spaces, unless something has a really high floor price and you're holding it almost as an investment. What is 90% of what people have in their wallet? It's some sort of like flavor of the week flip thing that they're holding on to try and sell before everyone else sells, which I think we're seeing this week with the Nakamigos thing, right? And it's like there's going to be a point where everyone wants to sell. It's like, so there'll be some people who will hold, but that's what really everyone's looking for in those new projects. So I think having an established project like this that has a huge community behind it, one great way to bring new people in is the exciting idea of actually being able to use these NFTs regularly, and change them and kind of play and trade with other people, right? And I think that's what's exciting, from my standpoint, as just someone from more of an outsider coming into the project. And I think that we can create that excitement across a lot of different projects as well. And obviously, projects are looking for ways to have sustainable revenue streams coming in, right? And ways to actually turn a profit for the project to stay afloat. Because I think, and I'm sure you're maybe exposed to this a little bit, what the average person in this market doesn't realize is there's a lot of costs to even just like server costs and things like that when you're actually having quite a large scale project like this. So I think this provides great revenue possibilities.
Completely. And I mean, on that point, I was having a conversation the other day with someone where they were like, "Oh, why is PA building this? Like, do they need multiple revenue streams because they're having money problems?" It's like, no. Like, you look at Yuga, they just did an ordinals sale. You look at DGods, they just did an ordinal sale. Everyone needs money to build products or to be a brand or to just sustain themselves through what's coming the next few years. And a lot of people don't recognize that. They're impatient. And it definitely leads to somewhat of that sentiment you're seeing, where now people move from project to project because they don't want to get burned, and they're not sure what is really going to make it. But one piece I do want to touch on too is the criticisms of New Dawn, because totally fair, and I want to address those. So one of those is a trait marketplace hurts people that may have bought rares back in the day, for maybe a little bit more money. It's a fair point for sure. My pushback there is you still have those individual traits that you paid a premium for. Now you can get, whether it's earned traits or you could purchase traits, you can make that piece more collectively rare again, and then maybe get more of your money back from that. Let's say it kind of declined in value. Then the second piece is extraction. So with New Dawn, you can basically extract an NFT into its individual traits, and it goes within the trait gallery. And they're not Web3 tokens as traits, only when they're reconstructed or deconstructed. Before that process, are they an NFT? They're in a holding contracts in the meantime. But people have been, buying rare traits off gens that they'll snipe, near the floor, and then extracting them, changing out the trait that they wanted to grab out, pulling it into its trait gallery. Maybe they flip that trait, or they'll then again put that Genesis back on reconstructed with a different trait that's not as rare. So that can lead to, and what we've seen recently is a little bit of a floor dip, because people are kind of putting the zombies per se towards the floor after they're done, kind of taking what they want out of it. So the team recognizes that, everyone in the community recognizes it, and the team definitely has brainstormed a few solutions for it. But the main piece really is trade economy is an experiment, and at the end of the day, you're going to see some of that happen because people are participating in the experiment. They're making their grails. So some, that portion near the floor may, be kind of, I would say, in a sense, affected by it. But in reality, because it's an experiment, there are different pivots and things to counter, each thing that might happen. So what the team plans to do, so this, I believe it's next week, is the Metaverse Pass trait drop, where they're going to be, expanding the number of traits in the ecosystem even further. But really, the theory is, as more and more traits get kind of involved within, the ecosystem, more and more people will, build grails and then also pick up stuff off the floor, because they can kind of build their own, identity from that set. So they could, buy the bottom dollar one and not worry about the highest rarity, and kind of build exactly what they want. So the third kind of criticism is around, more traits over time technically devalues traits as a whole, or even OG traits. So there's a few different theories from, some collectors within our community, as well as, bigger holders. But my perspective is this. So, people are going to pay a premium for what they want and what they like. That's always been the truth. Rarity obviously plays a factor in that, but it's not the end all be all. And so for me, I think adding more traits to kind of enable people to love their PFP even more actually helps. And this is really the grand scheme, grand picture here, is emotional utility. That's really what New Dawn is about, is helping people resonate with their identity more as an anonymous PFP, as well as helping, enable you to build whatever you like. So I think from that perspective, people will be holding onto their, PAs longer. They'll be more excited to rock them as a PFP, because, it's something they built, it's something they created in a sense. And I think that's really the exciting thing to see, is because when you look at projects like, Yuga, I mean, obviously they've delivered so much value and so much ROI for their, holders, in a sense, from just, buying in and reaping all the rewards if you bought in a while back. But, when you look at some of these other ones, it's not always the case. And so we really need to hone in on that aspect, and what, why we'll see more and more projects do well is that emotional utility aspect. Sappy Seals, Pudgy Penguins, and plenty of other really awesome communities. They do a terrific job with emotional utility, making you feel part of the community, making you love your PFP, making you feel, really that it's a part of your identity. So any way that we can help push that forward, I think is very exciting for the space.
For sure. And I think as a result, we've kind of also getting this sub grouping of Genesis that haven't been touched, that I think you're going to start to see people wanting to hold those ones, right? Because in this space where everyone's a collector, people love those kind of mint 10 out of 10 condition, baseball cards, and this is sort of a digital version of it, right? Like, hey, this is my Genesis PA that I minted, that has never been extracted or reconstructed. So I think you probably still have some people who will think that way and hold for those reasons as well. But yeah, I think that it does come back to what is the utility, and community, and like you said, emotional utility. That's a great way of putting it. Is huge, right? Like, most people right now, if they're looking at only the financial aspect of it, most of what most people are holding, they're horrendously down if they bought it a couple of years, a year and a half ago. And why are you still holding the things you are holding? Usually because you believe in some aspect of that project, right? And for me, honestly, a lot of the different communities I'm part of, like Lazy Lions, Rebels, PA, things like that, it is the community. Like, that's why I'm there, and the connections I've made. And it's, you see it whenever someone joins a PA community, they do that hashtag PA follow PA. Everyone jumps on it, and it's amazing, right? And that's a great feeling for a new holder. It's a great, for something that's a project that's I think over a year old now, to still have that vibe for someone coming in new is incredible. And that's something that you don't want to lose and something you want to promote and make sure people know, that's the type of community that you're joining. And then you have folks like yourself, who are making it, accessible. So if I join PA today, I can go and read some of the content that you've built out and understand some of the history and what I'm getting into, right? And what's coming in the future as well.
Exactly. And funny enough, I got asked this on a space today, but someone asked me like, "Why are you here in Web3?" Um, and the core of my answer was really education. I enjoy educating others and helping others. I always have worked for multiple nonprofits. Love giving back. It's just I was a charity chair for my fraternity back in college. For me, when I joined PA, I started making content that people really appreciated. I had never seen it in any other industry, that level of appreciation and support that made me want to keep going. But also, people have this narrative about me that just because I write about PA all the time, that I'm just a PA maxi and I think it's the best project ever, that you shouldn't buy anything else, that, if you give us criticism is unwarranted. Like, that's not true at all. I just genuinely found, my home within that community. I'm going to rock with them and support them. But it's tough to see because, I mean, like I said earlier, a lot of these projects are getting hit, hard by Blur and multiple other factors at play, especially the market. And it's chaotic because no one knows how to react. But it's also, why I've always loved kind of helping add to the education layer of it is, the community pretty much supported me up to me getting a job with PA. So I'm going to do everything in my power to support them. But at the same time, like I can be objective. Like, obviously, PA has made mistakes along the way. Maybe there were some pivots not everyone loved, and that's respectable. But I'm gonna, see this through in a sense of like I love this product. I'm a power user of it. Like, I'm in the top 5 of New Dawn. Spent more ETH than I would like to admit, but because I wanted to make sure it would work. And one, if you don't have power users, you're never really going to have real growth outside of it. So I think helping contribute to that and test it has been really exciting. And then just from a community standpoint, like they can come and go, but I really think more people that are supporting each other, helping educate, is really what this space needs.
Yeah, and I'm extremely attracted to the way that Volterra, speaks to the community directly, and listens to feedback. And we've seen a lot of founders who don't listen to their community and who just kind of say, I know what's, it's almost like they're your dad. I know what's best. Don't worry about it. Like, this is the plan. We're doing that. And there's been times where he's taken that moment of pause and said, you know what? I hear you guys and you're right. And we're going to regroup. And there was something like that recently that he did. Right. And we're going to kind of, go through and make a lot of major changes of the road, the stops along the way on the roadmap. And that's to me extremely admirable and makes me want to continue holding and makes me want to learn more and makes me want to continue investing. When I have a team and a founder who are, is a real person, is actually reacting to the things that they're hearing as that feedback from their community. And that's something that sadly is sometimes rare in this space, right? That's if the founder doesn't just rug and disappear on some of these newer projects. But that was something I found to be amazing.
I'm super glad you said that. And it sucks because there was a recent narrative that I personally had to deal with, and same with Volt, where Volt recently, because like I said, a lot of projects are getting hit. A lot of these founders deal with some warranted criticism for sure, but a lot of it is just like hate, negativity, or like one floor price, and it gets to them over time. But recently, Volt put out a few updates, about Phase Clan partnership for the for the trade marketplace, which he's incredibly excited about, and some updates for DEMP holders as well as psilocybin holders. And all the comments on his tweets were just like literally hate and negativity. And so he started doing more AMAs and Discord recently to kind of just to help community sentiment, which I'd love to see. But from an outsider's perspective, it does suck seeing that because in reality, he did that. He was trying to listen to his community. He was trying to take in feedback, which is exactly what you want to see from a leader. But then there was some discussions of a DAO, suggested by one of the community members in our Discord, and so Volt shot it out as a tweet. But then the narrative got started. Oh, Volt's going to rug the project. He wants to sell it. But the case in point reality there was he was just listening to his community and wanted to see, because there was a lot of negative feedback, and I'm sure it was due to floor price too, because people don't care what you deliver. It's really just a attention economy who can drive the most hype. And so I think the influencers, as well as some of the narratives in this space, can really be detrimental to just founders' mental health, as well as just communities like long term. We've seen it time and time again, but it's founders can make mistakes. So we're all human. There's no project out there that hasn't made a mistake, whether it's Yuga, Doodles, Artifacts, I could go on, and that includes PA. That includes literally every single project. But founders can, one, get overwhelmed, and two, I mean, look at the times we're in. I mean, from a psychological standpoint, if you put like 1,000, I don't know, a few hundred or 1,000 people in a room, and they were all yelling at one person about different things, like eventually that person's going to crack. And I think it sucks because it's a double standard in this space, but communities and people and leaders in the space really need to do a better job of helping support the real teams and real founders. Just because you're profit chasing and degen flipping, there's nothing wrong with that, but also help verbally support, or show some financial support to the teams that are actually delivering. That's my fear and worry, because it is starting to get to some of them, and then that narrative is really tough, because like I said, it's an attention economy. So rumors can get started and swirled, and things can be completely false and propagated, on Twitter for 2-3 days. So it's incredibly dangerous. I mean, we saw it recently with Nakamigos. Someone, I don't know exactly who, decided they wanted to start the rumor that it might be affiliated with Larva Labs, but in reality never was. But I mean, may have that attributed to people jumping in. I have no idea. Maybe. And I just think people need to be a little bit more responsible in that standpoint, because the reality is, when you have things like Trump NFTs, art gobblers, and others outperforming legitimate projects, it really does break down these founders, like I said. And I know it's no one's business to tell each other what to do with their money, but at a certain point, I hope people wake up a little bit and realize 99% of these that they've been trading or flipping may not really last. So that's why I'm just kind of more of a passionate and sometimes loud supporter of PA, as well as other communities. I mean, I hold a few different NFTs. I love Wab at the Seals, Pawns with the Plague. I'm a huge fan of Jack Butcher and what he's been doing in terms of innovating the space. But you don't see that enough. You see a whole lot of FUD and destruction, because it's a community battle. And Whale, who's a great content creator, I can't remember if it's Whale or Wally, but he wrote a great thread about the community kind of competitiveness right now. And there was also a Spaces earlier today I was listening to, where someone almost suggested NFT communities are somewhat similar to sports teams, where there's that competitive edge and almost like that hate between them of like who can be better, who's going to win the championship. When in reality, it really shouldn't be like that if we do want to move the space forward. So that would be my 2 cents there.
Yeah, it's true. That reminded me of something I just saw on my timeline today, where somebody had actually shared a tweet from just someone I didn't follow, who said, "Hey, I'm finally ready to jump into Lazy Lions, and like that's a project I love, and it's what I'm using as my PFP." And people were posting their lions and hashtag roar and all this stuff, and just creating great energy. Yeah, jump in, man. It's a great time. And then someone was on there from another project. I don't want to like call it the project, but a strong community project. And their answers were like, why would you do that? Just by, our project and stuff. It's like, that's a weird energy to bring. Like, we're having a good vibe here. Like, you wouldn't do that in person at a party. If someone was like, hey, let's listen to this album from this band, you wouldn't just go and shit on the band if there's 10 people talking about like, hey, this is great. Let's throw this in the so a CD player. I was too old saying that, but you know what I mean? Throw this Spotify playlist on or whatever. It's just a weird way to interact. And I think the problem is that barrier of being online, and we see this with like YouTube comments and stuff, is that people will say wild shit they wouldn't say in person to someone, right? And that's the same with what they will say to a founder. Like, if a founder is essentially a business owner, in my opinion, would you go into a local business and talk to the owner of the store and say, "Oh, your store sucks and you don't know what you're doing." Blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't do that to someone face to face, right? That would be very fucking weird to do socially. But people will do it online, right? And that's just crazy, and that's kind of part of, unfortunately, part of the space. And then my other 2 cents, and I don't want to throw younger folks under the bus, but once we saw prices dump and we really hit the bear and ETH was around $1,200, and it wasn't so expensive to be over here playing in ETH, we saw a lot of younger folks enter the market. And I've met a lot of young folks who are doing amazing things, so I'm not trying to say that, but we did see a lot of folks who just didn't have that patience and didn't realize what they were buying into with some of these projects. And because they bought some quick flips where they made huge profits at the top of the bull, they just expect that now, even now in the depths of the bear market we've been in for over a year now, right? And that impatience and that kills projects, because you get these people who are not willing to hold for 24 hours or whatever, and not only with new projects but with established projects, and that starts to hurt the project, right? When you have people buying in based on some piece of news they heard, and they start just absolutely annihilating the floor, or fudding the project because it didn't do the performance they thought it was going to do financially and stuff like that. So we're in an interesting space where I think we have not the same audience that maybe we had a year and a half ago in this space, and also that layer of the digital interaction just creates that openness for people to do things that they really wouldn't do in person, right? So
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. The keyboard warrior syndrome is very, very prevalent in social media, and it's tough. The truth is, life is not fair. There's shitty people out there in this world, and you got to have some thick skin. But the thing is, at the same time, I'm not ever going to be supportive of people hating or causing issues for another, or being incredibly divisive or saying things inappropriate. But man, it's tough because, like you said, everything you see on Twitter is not necessarily true, and it drives a whole lot of speculation in this kind of market and the way people react. And I wish more people took note of that, because there are people there that genuinely care for the space, and there's other people that literally only care about profit. And there's nothing wrong with caring about profit, but in reality, those people will probably throw you underneath the bus. So just try and pay attention to the contributors of, I would say, the space that aren't regularly doing that, aren't shilling the next best thing, and really just look for who's building every day, who shows up, whose community is still here a year out from now. And I think that's really important for people to recognize, but I do think it's going to take some time, because like you said, the maturity level is just not quite there, and people can really only stay in a project for 12 or 24 hours, and if it doesn't 10x, oh, it was a rug. And that's just a terrible narrative to create. The word rug is also thrown around way too often. It's been thrown at PA, which is completely objectively untrue, just from what they've delivered, as well as the fact that we're all still here. But it's just too much of a loose term. Like for PA's example, a whale came in, spent millions of dollars on PA over 3 days, and pumped the floor price up to 5. No one from the team, as well as some of the leaders in the community, thought that would ever naturally last, because it was artificially created. If that had been hundreds or thousands of holders joining, different case scenario there. But the thing is, that created an artificial floor that now everyone loves to mock us for. That there's the meme of what happened to PA, where it shows the peak of Galactic Shaman buying up to 5, then the steady decline ever since then. And it's unfortunate, but it's the reality of the truth. Is whales can make or break projects, and I have nothing against them. I'm actually friends with a whole lot of them. But the thing is, when people are clowning you for floor price of your high during the bull, it's really ironic when you delivered way more now, and things are going up and up in terms of partnerships and things coming down the line. But that's not what people care about, at least not yet. And I think, like I said, we'll see that over time develop. But man, like it does suck, and it is really ironic for us to get clowned for a price that we had no part in playing. I've had people ask me, will we ever return to that price again? I have no clue, maybe, but I'm not holding out for it, because realistically, if someone drops $2-3 million on your project in a day, you should probably be selling that day. And I don't blame anyone but ourselves if people didn't take profits. That includes me, but I'm not the one taking it out on the founder. I'm not hating on him. And I think what you touched on is really important. There's a very distinct line between constructive criticism that's very helpful for the team and just hate or negativity. And really the underlying difference between the two is, are you asking a question? Are you asking questions, or are you just hating? So like if someone asks like what happened, or where is this going, I don't have an issue with that. But when someone jumps in and they're like, oh, this is a rug, like they've delivered nothing, like I can't find any info. I'm like, all right, how much did you try? Like, did you actually put any research in? Have you been paying attention to the updates? And like you said, attention spans are short and quick. So, if people have stepped out of a project for 3 to 6 months and they come back and the floor price has declined, their first thought is this a rug? And it's terrible, but that's what a lot of projects are dealing with right now. So, from that sense, I completely agree with what you're saying. We got to be positive, but we got to, help spread the idea of constructive criticism and asking questions, and trying to understand multiple sides before just jumping straight into purely negative feedback, because that it just becomes a loop, and it's become a loop for every project. Like I said earlier, every single project has gotten funded, from the top of the flagship Yuga down to the bottom of the food chain. Every single one of them has made a mistake, and so people really need to be cognizant of that for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and what you said, it's someone kind of coming back a few months later and saying what happened. In my opinion, do not enter this space if you're not going to be able to keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on fairly regularly. This is not the kind of space that you can buy something and disappear for 6 months and expect to come back and see it in the same condition you left it in. And that's something that I found with some folks too, is if they're coming from traditional, like, I hate calling it investments, because like a lot of this is very speculative gambling on something that's very new, right? But people who come from, like a stocks background, they can have those longer term holds, and sort of expect certain performance. But that's not what this space is about. There's always innovations and things changing, and so folks can't come back and ask that. To me, that's them, not really keeping track of what they're invested in. Just a quick sidebar, because we've mentioned, hot projects and like the Nakamigos thing recently. I got a free mint on that because I had the end of Satoshi pass, and they announced back in January that we would get that free mint. And of course, mint day and the day after, when the price started going up, there was people just fudding on their posts, right? This is crazy. I had a free mint and no one told me, blah, blah, blah. And there was months of information in posts about it, right? And it's because they weren't paying attention to it, right? And that's on you, right? We need to have that ownership and responsibility, and that's hard in life for a lot of people to have. But you really have to be able to say, hey, that's my bad, right? I have to keep track of what I'm invested in, and what's coming up with these projects. And sometimes people just want to kind of be passive, like you said, and say, oh, I don't see anything about this, I can't find any information. Like, what they're really saying is, please come use your brain for me, right? And it's like, it's so frustrating, because I think you need to be able to at least dig in. I'm saying asking for help is great, but you need to be able to know how to quote unquote do your own research, in all aspects of a project. Yeah, so it sucks when it turns into FUD, and it sucks when sometimes you now have people repeating that FUD who don't even really know where it came from. They're just repeating some shit they've heard now, right?
Exactly. And I mean, again, you hit on another great note. And distinctively, if we're talking about gambling versus investing, if you're an actual investor, let's separate this from NFTs, because we don't want to consider NFTs investing. But if you did, then as a stock investor, as a successful stock investor, you're probably reading 10Ks, you're, listening to earnings calls, you're doing research, because in reality, that's what you do to make money and invest. Gambling, you go in and you hope you get lucky. You hope you hit a jackpot. In reality, right now, NFTs are way more gambling than investing. People love to say, oh, I invested in this project. No, you didn't. You don't have a share in the company. You're a product consumer. And I made this comparison earlier on another spaces recently, but the best way I could really describe NFTs are like, JPEGs attached to a Kickstarter project. I'm not sure if you remember Kickstarter.com, but they had a lot of different projects come in and out. I bought a few of them, and those companies, some of them never go anywhere. 1% of them will make it. But they're not shareholders. They're really just product testers and product consumers. And people need to realize that for NFTs as well. Like in reality, right now, all it is gambling. Until adoption comes, until maturity comes, and that's why it's scary for some people to see legit projects bleed. Is you can have a really legit team, really legit founder, delivered a whole ton, and none of that matters because all people care about is making money for now. So till we have a slight shift in that, maybe it's big, large Web2 brands coming in, maybe it's adoption through the sense of we're using smart contracts and Web3 without knowing about it for new people coming in. Maybe it's point of sale systems like having credit cards versus MetaMasks. There's a lot of different ways we could drive adoption, but ultimately, until maturity kind of happens, you're going to see this keep playing out, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think we're still seeing a lot of that, people kind of waiting for what's next, right? Like something mints out and the next day they're like, okay, so what's the airdrop, right? Like what's like people are still asking those questions, and it's crazy because they have this mentality that they've invested in a company. They some people legitimately think they're like a shareholder, but no, it's like you bought a product. And I used this example before. It's like when I buy a new PlayStation, right? Like I'm just buying a product. I'm not buying part of Sony, right? And I can't get angry at Sony because I have a PS4 and they put out a PS5. That's crazy. Why didn't you airdrop me it? Like I'm an investor here. Like no, I'm just a consumer that owns a product, right? And I think that people need to start understanding that more. And I think that maybe because there was so much liquidity going around, and when there was the top of the bull and everybody was airdropping, whether it was more NFTs or useless tokens or whitelist opportunities or whatever it was, people got used to that and thought that was normal. But like people got to realize that little 2 year bubble of kind of that bull market and like all the COVID shit going on that was affecting it, money printing. We can get, obviously we can zoom way out and it gets even crazier, but that was not a normal market condition, right? And there was a lot of things happening there that can't really happen and haven't happened before or after, as a result of a lot of the perfect storm of these events happening all at once. Like governments. I think you're in the U.S. I'm in Canada. They were giving folks money, like just monthly, just here's money here. And people were supposed to use it for the rent and stuff, but lots of people were just aping it into NFTs and crypto and other shit, right? Like, so that's not a normal condition of the market where people just have this disposable income handed to them. And people are expecting that now 2 years later when, we're reaping what we've sown from that time. Like realistically, economically, everything should have crashed in March of 2020, but we've inflated our way out of it. But now, the toll has come due, right? And we're seeing these things happening economically, and it's definitely affecting the crypto market as well. And you can't expect to be getting the same treatment and all the same free stuff and all the quote unquote benefits as a holder from these projects when there's just isn't the money there to develop these things, or even just to pay the gas fee to drop it in your wallet, right? Like that's what people don't realize. And I think that's where I said the audience is a little immature in their understanding of a business and costs and scaling, right? Like you think about airdropping something for $1 in gas, yes, but if you have 10,000 pieces you have to airdrop, it's $10,000 in just transaction fees, right? Like there's no benefit in spending that money for a project right now.
Completely agree. I mean, you hit the nail on that there. I mean, it's the times are interesting for sure, and I think really like a broken heart, and this bear market. The only thing that can really solve it is time.
And I think that's probably a good note to end on. I think we touched on a lot of different things there. You did mention you're doing a Spaces with Thread Guy on Friday, I believe.
That is correct. And I also have a few other exciting speakers coming through after him, so really excited about that. But yeah, I've been growing the series out. The end goal, I'm not really entirely sure, but for me, it was just be someone I may not know every single piece of information. I may not be the best trader, but what I can do is highlight some people that are adding and contributing value to the space, and hit on different topics and help educate others in terms of what they're an expert in. And so I'm trying to do that to the best of my ability because like people saw me as an expert in PA and understanding its ecosystem. There's a lot of different experts out there on different topics that need to be highlighted quite a bit more. So that is really my ultimate end goal.
And I think we're seeing a lot of really great, content coming out now where we have this time to build and we're seeing folks trying different things. It's kind of what led me to try this. And I'm definitely going to make sure, we release this show usually on Friday, so I'm going to try and release maybe like Thursday night. Definitely want to shout out that space, get more people there, for sure. It's at a great time as well, so it should be good for attendance. And I'm going to definitely try and jump in and join you guys as well. Thank you again, sir. Appreciate your time, and I'm excited to hear more from you and read more from you.
Appreciate that so much. I'm also going to be hopefully launching my Substack and new website here soon. I've had a lot of things on my plate, but appreciate you hosting me again, and I'm always happy to join again. And I'll take a listen to some of your other podcast shows. Appreciate you having me again.